everybody, it's Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast, where we're not overreacting to camp videos. It's me, your man, MG Marcas Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and LaQuan Jones. And I guess I should ask. I shouldn't just lump you in with me, fellas. I mean, LaQuan, are you reacting to camp videos?
No, but I like seeing players that were injured last season. They're out there practicing, moving around, looking good. Those are the videos that I'm really attached to, I should say.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have, Florio, a rule of thumb about camp videos? Like, are there certain ones you care about, or are you just kind of ignoring all of them, or do you get hyped over all of them?
I try to ignore all of them. I do agree with LQ's point. It's good to see players who were hurt last year back out there doing their thing. The only time I get hyped is if I'm really I tell myself not to get hyped, but then I see Anthony Richardson doing something or Kyle Pitts doing something, and I'm like, all right, yeah, let's get fired. But that's what these videos should they should get you excited for football and stuff like that, but they shouldn't change your rankings or how you view a player or anything like that.
I would say the Kyle Pitts, leaping catch. I know that got a lot of people hot and bothered, right? I think it goes one of two ways with Kyle Pitts. Either it's I guess one of three ways. Either I'm back in, I was always in, or I'm not getting sucked in again. I think that's where we are with Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Regardless of what he does.
I'm in this year, though. I mean, it wasn't because of the video. It's more so the changes that happened this offseason. There's no Arthur Smith, you have Kirk Cousins. It's okay, I can buy into this because we know he's talented. It was just a situation. It wasn't good.
Also, being in on Kyle Pitts is kind of a prerequisite to being on this show because Florio and I never left.
I was going to say, you don't have to ask me. You know where I stand.
We never left. So, being on this show, you sort of have to be. That's just, those are the rules. This.
When that video came out the other day, I tweeted, I was like, just be warned, I'm once again telling you to draft Kyle Pitts this year. And most of the responses were like, we're in this year. So I think everyone gets it. Quarterback upgrade, coach upgrade, let's go.
So I will say this. If he underperforms or underwhelms this year, I think everybody's out. I think that's it.
It's over then.
Right? Because every year there has been a reason why. Was, the rookie year was good. It just, I don't know, he was overhyped, and so people were disappointed, even though he had 1,000 yards that year. Then he got hurt. Then he had a galaxy-brained coach. He had quarterback issues. This year, Arthur Smith's gone. They've upgraded to Kirk Cousins. He's healthy again. Everything has finally come together. So, if it doesn't happen this year, I think everybody's just well, that's just what it is.
Yeah, so, it is what it is.
Just to remind everyone, though, Kyle Pitts is just 2 years older than Brock Bowers, who we are all claiming is the future at the position. And I think that Kyle Pitts was a better prospect than Brock Bowers. So I'm not giving up.
I should actually look this up. I saw something that said Michael Penix Jr. is older than Kyle Pitts. Is that really true?
Let's see.
Look it up. He is. Michael Penix Jr. is older than Kyle Pitts by a few months. But yeah,
crazy.
That's
insane. Wow,
that is. Literally,
I did not realize that. That's a brain blast right there.
That is literally crazy. Yeah. We have plenty to talk about on the show today. We're going to dive into what we call the Super Nuggets, our research team who does a great job all year long. They hit us up at the end of the year, and they put together a lot of interesting little nuggets of things that happened during the season and sort of how they fit contextually in the greater scheme of the NFL and fantasy football. So I picked out a handful of them, and we'll use this to kind of talk about guys that maybe we like, maybe we should be worried about this year. Also, because we are in the midst of OTA season, play a little bit of Hype Train or Smokescreen later on in the show. But let's get started with a few news headlines. And LaQuan, you talked about watching videos and seeing guys who were injured out on the field running and getting back into the action. Tank Dell is out running routes and apparently looking healthy. Now, he was suffered a gunshot wound about 3 weeks or so ago. He is back out on the field. He also suffered an injury last year that kept him out at the end of the season. Right now, he's going as a top 30 wide receiver. I believe on Underdog, he's at 27, if I remember correctly, from yesterday. How comfortable are you right now with Dell as a top 30 receiver? And I guess the follow-up to that is, what concerns you more? Is it the injuries or is it the depth in Houston's wide receiver room?
Wide receiver 27 is a little expensive for me of where he's going. That's like somewhat of the fourth round where he's getting off the board. And I think there's still some question marks of how this is actually going to gel together. Like I see a couple people on the internet saying, if he goes into the slot, he'll be capped out where, a lot of defenses can crowd up those passing lanes for him, where I think if you have a guy that can win outside as quick as he is, I think he'll be more so of a guy that can play out wide versus somebody like Nico Collins, who showed some type of production playing out of the slot. So that's my big number one. Where is this guy going to play at for me to be making this fourth round investment on him? So the injuries, obviously, across the board, health is going to be the major factor here from the Texans O-line, from Tank Dell, and from Nico Collins staying on the field. Diggs has been pretty much solid when it comes to that injury concern. So more so my big concern here is, where's this dude going to be playing on the field?
I mean, who's the number one receiver in Houston right now, Florio? Is it Nico Collins? Is it Stephon Diggs? Who do you think is the wide receiver one this year?
That is a very good question, and that is why the uncertainty that I have makes it a little bit hard to kind of firmly plant a flag on any of these guys. I think for weekly volume, Steph Diggs will be the safest one. I think he'll get he's not going to get the 160 targets that he's used to getting in Buffalo, but I could see him getting a consistent 7-8 targets a game, something like that. But Nico Collins is the big play threat, so he could, even on lesser volume, potentially put up better numbers. And Tank Dell is kind of a similar player. So the one I think I feel most confident drafting right now is Nico Collins, but the thing is, he's the most expensive one of this bunch. Maybe you guys could say this is vengeance or something like that, but Diggs is becoming the one that I think I want to draft the least, because he might get the safest amount of volume, but it's going to be lower air yards per target and stuff like that. And if he's not being utilized in the red zone, if he's not getting the volume that he got in Buffalo, it's going to be hard for him to live up to that top, what is he, the wide receiver 17 right now going off the board. So this is one of those offenses that I want pieces of, but I think it's one where I'll spread it out and I'll have a couple of teams with Diggs, a couple with Dell, a couple with Collins, because at least as of now, May 22nd, I don't have a strong read on one of them over the other three.
I mean, that's, I think, the safest route to go about it right now. If there's a thing we learned about CJ Stroud, he will throw to the open guy. He's not necessarily going to force the ball to one guy, and he didn't have to last year. He was able to make it work with both Collins and Dell. Now you add Diggs to that, and regardless of how things finished in Buffalo, there's still a lot of talent there for Stephon Diggs. There's still something left in the tank. He can still get open. He can still be a high-level wide receiver. So the guy that's open is the guy that's going to get the ball. It's going to be hard to figure out on a week-to-week basis. Whereas this offense, this wide receiver room is going to be, I think, a lot more safe, I guess, in best ball than it will be in redraft leagues, because I think we're going to be frustrated trying to figure it out. I mean, Florio, we were frustrated talking about this last year in redraft leagues because some weeks were the Collins weeks, some weeks were the Dell weeks. Now you're adding Stephon Diggs to that mix. It's only going to get more frustrating. That's before you get to whatever targets Joe Mixon and Dalton Schultz and those guys are able.
Forgot about Mixon.
Yeah,
the real winner here, though. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the real winner here out of all of this is CJ Stroud, and that's why he's sitting in the top 5, quarterback listings right now. And it's he becomes such a dominant force going into the season with all these weapons. You have a great running back that can help in the passing game. You have Stephon Diggs, who's still Stephon Diggs. We're not talking about him as if he's lost a step. It's just that he's going into a crowded room where he's never had this energy match on a talent level. And he never had this type of competition for, targets. And I really feel as though Tank Dell brings something to the table. Nico brings something to the table. So the biggest winner here is CJ Stroud lockdown.
I mean, it feels like last year we were like, I don't know how I feel about the Jaguars receivers, but I'm going to draft Trevor Lawrence. It didn't work out for Trevor Lawrence, but it might work for us. I mean, that's sort of how I'm feeling about it this year.
Just wanted on Diggs. I know we're not treating him like he lost the step. It's more volume concern. I agree with that, but should we be treating him like he lost a step? Because last year was his worst year by far in Buffalo. The second half of the season, he did kind of fade, and he's approaching 31 years old. And a rule of thumb for me is when I see an older player starting to decline, I usually want to fade him the next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but I think the counter to that is he's also not going to be relied upon to carry the passing
Carry
game.
the team. Yeah.
You know, he had a lot more responsibility in Buffalo because like you weren't going to ask Gabe Davis to do it. Khalil Shakir wasn't going to be able to do it. You just didn't have that support around him where he's going to have that in Houston. So he very well may have lost a step. I think that's a fair assessment of him. But I also think it's fair to say that he's not going to have the same level of burden on his back that he did those last couple of years with the Bills. In New England, the Patriots, like everybody else, in OTAs right now, Gerard Mayo has been very forthcoming in his evaluations of his players so far. We talked last week about him saying that Drake May still has a lot to work on when it comes to getting ready for the season. The next thing he says, the Patriots wide receiver room is a, quote, wide open competition. And Florio, I know we've kind of touched on these guys. We talked about guys like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. There's Demario Douglas. I had to remind myself that Juju Smith-Schuster is still there.
Yeah.
That's where we are now.
Yeah.
Which Pats wide receiver or receivers, if any, are you most interested in? And what actually is the ceiling for any of these guys this year?
I continue to Javon Baker is the one that I'm most interested in, but even with that, I'm telling myself, like, spread it out a little bit. Like, yeah, I'll have the most exposure to Baker, but in a couple of best balls, take Jalen Polk, take Demario Douglas, because what if I'm wrong? And I want to cover my bases. But the ceiling, it purely comes down to what Drake May is. Like, Javon Baker, even before the draft, I had said, like, if any day 3 wide receiver goes on a year 1 Tank Dell run, I think it will be Javon Baker. But let's be honest, if Tank Dell wouldn't have been Tank Dell and we wouldn't have been talking about him if CJ Stroud just was not, like, if he had Bryce Young instead of CJ Stroud last year, most people don't even know the name Tank Dell right now. So much of what their ceiling is comes down to what Drake May will be, because even if he doesn't start the season, I'm anticipating we see more Drake May this year than we do Jacoby Brissett. Now, if we see Brissett, I think the ceiling is like wide receiver 3 range, but I'm thinking we're going to see May.
Yeah, no, the ceiling comes down if it's Jacoby Brissett. The thing about Brissett is he's steady. He's not remarkable in terms of what he's going to offer you on the field and what he's going to mean for his wide receivers. He's the guy that you turn to, like, you're like, hey, just don't screw this up. And that's Jacoby Brissett. Drake May is the guy you're like, hey, look, you're going to make some mistakes. We understand that, but we think the ceiling is higher. And so I think for that reason, I have been more in on the 2 rookies, whether it's Polk or Baker in this offense. But LaQuan, I mean, are we overlooking Demario Douglas? Because he did show some things last year in an offense that, look, the Patriots probably had the worst wide receiver room in the league the last couple of years. But Douglas did show some things. Are we overlooking him right now?
I think we are, because he was probably one of the most explosive players on that offense, as bad as it was. Like, it didn't have any life. They weren't moving the chain. So for him to be able to still put something on tape and put something out there that he can be utilized in multiple ways. And I think it would be a huge mistake to not have him somewhat as a featured, player in this offense in the game plan week to week. I mean, the dude is running the slot, so he's constantly getting the mismatch, and he's going to be able to be a nice security blanket for Drake May or Brissett, whoever's at the quarterback position, because that's really what he was for Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. Like, you just dump it off him, and he creates after that. He's able to create after the catch. And I think, having a guy on your roster already established like that, you kind of want to keep him involved. So out of all the wide receivers, he'll probably be the most interested I will be in for at least some day 1 impact that I'm praying and hoping for.
So I think it's sort of like, a lesser version of what we just talked about in Houston, where I think Douglas is the guy that probably wins on volume. He gets probably the most opportunities there. Polk and Baker are the guys that maybe have the more spike week potential. And then, You got
80. He had 87, fantasy opportunities, which led the wide receivers. So it's more so it's clear as day that he's out there trying to make something happen. I mean, the second guy would be Kendrick Bourne with 56. So look at that gap in fantasy opportunities when it comes to that.
I was just about to ask, any interest in Kendrick Bourne and or Juju?
Juju, man, I'm laughing for other reasons, just based on my home league. My buddy putting up Juju Smith-Schuster on the trade block, actually looking for picks, having guys enter my office for Juju. So that's the only reason why I'm laughing a little bit more when he comes up. Dude, nobody's trading for Juju
No
right
one's
now.
trading for Juju.
I'll give you one fab buck. That's about it.
No one.
You're overpaying.
Overpaying.
No one's trading for Juju Smith-Schuster.
Come on, man.
That's the big takeaway there. One other note, and this is not anything that has to do with your fantasy teams currently, but maybe your fantasy teams of the past. David Johnson has announced his retirement after 8 seasons. Now, I think, in fairness, the league probably retired him maybe a couple years ago. He didn't play at all last year. I think 2 seasons ago, he was on the Saints practice squad, I believe. So it's been a while since we have seen David Johnson really on the field in any real way. But the question I always like to ask, and I will put it to both of you, I'll start with you, LaQuan, is David Johnson a fantasy Hall of Famer?
Yes, we need to have a fantasy Hall of Fame trophy room for these guys, because he's definitely one of them, man. He was taking over teams. I hated facing David Johnson in fantasy, man, because I knew what was already in store. It was a big fat L. So it was just kind of man, I can't punch back because this dude has David Johnson, and he always was one of those guys that you hate seeing coming up on the schedule as your opponent and league mate has. So he is definitely top ballot of the Hall of Fame fantasy.
Wow, you agree? You think he's a fantasy Hall of Famer, Florio?
I disagree. I do not think he is. I think he is one of those really fun players who, I mean, you remember that one year he had where he went for over 21 total scrimmage yards, 20 touchdowns. You're and people loved him before that coming into that year. So that was awesome. But outside of that year, it wasn't great. He had one other season where he topped 1,050 scrimmage yards, and so after it was injuries and stuff. Talent wise, he had the ability to do so, and then getting hurt after that big year kind of sucked a lot of joy out of it. But maybe if we hold it to NBA Hall of Fame standards, he's in. By MLB Hall of Fame standards, he is not in.
In NBA Hall of Fame, it's just doors wide
Chauncey
open.
Billups got in. I loved Chauncey Billups. I did not think he was a Hall of Famer.
It is. The NBA's
Wait, is
hey,
Brian
come on in,
Scalabrine Hall of Famer?
Hey man, we're not going to shame the white mamba. All right, I'm sitting here. I'm wearing my USC hoodie. We are not going to shame.
Fan. That's what I'm asking. Though.
We are not.
Did he go to
going
USC?
He did. We are not going to slander the white mamba on this show. It's just not going to happen.
High five.
Yeah, I wanted when I first put the question in there, I was like, I think it's going to be interesting. And then I went back and looked, and I was like, yeah, there were really only maybe a couple of really big years, but man, that 2016 year, that 2016 year was huge. And I will say
is awesome.
Personally, that 2016 year was great because that was the year I remember coming out before the season and just saying, look, David Johnson, no matter what. Which, by the way, on the cheat sheet tomorrow, we are going to be reviewing Draft Day. So, LaQuan, you got to watch Draft Day tonight. That's your homework.
Yes.
But I did. I had the post-it note. I made it up, and it just said David Johnson, no matter what. He was my 1.01 that year. I was yelling it from the rooftops, and it worked out in maybe the biggest, bestest way possible. But then you're right, Florida. The injuries sort of hit. But I also remember David Johnson as kind of being that first guy where everybody was like, oh, they're going to line him up in the slot. Oh, we got to draft David Johnson because he's going to be a slot receiver. And then when you went back and looked at it, he wasn't really in the slot that often. I think you look at back
and that report, yeah, he's going to be in the slot. And
yeah, it's just less than 10% of his snaps were in the slot. You're like, okay, this isn't really a thing. So the peak was amazing. The longevity, probably not so much.
You hated facing him in 20.
You really did. No, that was true. You didn't want to go against David Johnson because you probably were going to catch an L that week for sure. Let's dive into some fantasy super nuggets. These come courtesy of the research team, specifically Joel Smith and Karine Falcone, who do an excellent job feeding us information on NFL Fantasy Live all throughout the season. So at the end of the year, they compile a bunch of stats. They send them to us, and we pick and choose the things that we think are interesting. So we're going to dive in and talk about some of these things. The first one that jumped out to me, Jalen Hurts scored 65.1 fantasy points from the 1 yard line. That's almost 31 more points than the next closest quarterback. It turns out to be a little more than 18% of his fantasy points.
Wow.
Yeah, the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, was fantasy gold. Unless you had DeAndre Swift. I'm raising my hand. But obviously, some of the big news in the offseason for the Eagles is that Jason Kelce has retired. Now, if you ask a lot of observers, that he was a big part of the reason it was so successful, that he figured out how to be the low man, use his leverage. They also have a quarterback who can squat 600 pounds, and that had a lot to do with it as well. So, Florio, without Jason Kelce, how concerned should we be about Hurts? Does this number come down significantly, and is there a way for him to supplement it in some other part of his game?
This is one of those things that, like, you can be worried about it, but there's zero way of quantifying it, in my opinion, because we don't know what he looks like without Jason Kelce. We haven't seen it. How much of the tush push is their new center, Cam Jurgens, is listed as 10 pounds heavier than Jason Kelce. So he's just as big. Last I checked, Jalen Hurts could still squat 600 pounds. So right. I'm thinking we're still going to get a lot of Jalen Hurts near the goal line. Maybe not as much as last year. But then again, I don't know how much of that is because of Jason Kelce and how much of it is because Jalen Hurts has gotten banged up each of the last couple of years. And they're like, maybe we don't use our franchise quarterback as a goal line runner 20 times a year. Yeah. Maybe we pick and choose our spots a little bit better. So it is a concern for Jalen Hurts, but not enough for me to significantly discount him in the rankings or anything. Like, he's still my QB2 as of right now, behind only Josh Allen. And if he stops running near the goal line, it will hurt his fantasy value 100%. But there's also room for him to grow as a passer this year and to get back to where he was 2 years ago, where he was just pure cheat code mode. Like, we didn't have that Jalen Hurts last year. So, yes, it's a little concerning, but not enough for me to really change anything about it.
Let me throw another wrench in this for you, LaQuan. DeAndre Swift is gone. He's in Chicago now. Saquon Barkley is in, who is about 20 pounds heavier than DeAndre Swift. Is there a chance that some of those 1 yard runs that went to Jalen Hurts, instead now they just turn around and they hand it off to Saquon this year?
I think you have to. I mean, you bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley that you still believe has some juice to him, and I think you would want to get maximum capacity out of his talent. So obviously, when you start getting to that goal line, you have a paid franchise quarterback that Florio mentioned that's been getting banged up these last couple of years. You want to keep him upright. So I think Saquon becomes a huge red zone threat for him. I'm not going to say Saquon's going to go out there and put up 10 touchdowns or anything like that, but it's on the table for him to be more involved in the red zone than Jalen Hurts getting those like tush push and QB sneaks and stuff.
I think Saquon can get 10 touchdowns. I think he can get 10.
I'm not going to pound the table for it because there's still injury risk. I don't know if he's going to be fully healthy. So I'm not going to say he's going to get 10 plus, but it's on the table for him if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think 10 touchdowns are definitely possible if they get close, because I think at some point, if you're the Eagles, sure, it's been great having your quarterback take these opportunities, but maybe not so much.
No.
Yeah, if you're trying to build around him for the long term, for sure. Speaking of quarterbacks, we have a couple of big name quarterbacks coming off major injury, Achilles injuries from past season, courtesy of our research team. Dan Marino in 1994 went for 4,453 passing yards and 30 touchdowns, coming off of a torn Achilles. He was the fantasy QB3 that season, really the only notable quarterback to have a big season coming off an Achilles injury. Obviously, both Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers are doing the same. LaQuan, both of them are much older than 33 years old at this point, especially Rodgers. can either one of them finish as a QB1? Can they be top 12 guys this year coming off that injury?
I listen, 1994 is a long, long time ago and completely different game. And, with these two guys older, I just don't see it. I honestly still have my question marks around Kirk Cousins as well, coming back from this injury. And obviously Aaron Rodgers with his age and mobility and ability in general to stay on the field this year. I just don't see it.
Side note, that 1994 season, that was the first year I ever played fantasy football, and Dan Marino was my first round pick that year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I didn't make the playoffs.
I was 3 years old.
Thanks. Thanks, man. Can we mute his mic for a while? That was my first
coming.
That was my first round pick, and I know nowadays you're like, why did you? But back then, we hadn't really evolved draft theory or whatever. So everybody drafted quarterbacks in the first round. It just made more sense, right? They score the most points. Why wouldn't you draft him in the first round? So
exactly.
I couldn't tell you who else was on my team that year, but I know I drafted Dan Marino in the first round. So that if that's the case, Florian, I don't know if you agree with LaQuan saying that it's going to be a struggle for them. Is it worth drafting one or both? I mean, obviously not on the same team, but either one of these guys this year.
I don't love targeting either one of them, and I think they could finish as volume low end QB1s, where similar to what Rodgers did 2 years ago when he had that hand issue where he finished, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks as a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but because he stayed healthy and was able to compile stats, he finishes QB 13, so it was just on that borderline. I could see him having something like that where maybe he backs in as a QB1 at the end of the year, but I'd much rather take those picks on upside shots, like either Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, or I like Matt Stafford more. There's a lot of guys in that range who I would rather have, and I was tweeting about this yesterday when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. I understand he's looking great right now in camp, 7-on-7, stuff like that, with no pads and everything. Not only is he coming off of this major injury, which we have one case of pointing back to and saying, look, this guy was a success after that injury.
Who, by the way, was a guy who's considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, too, right?
Yeah, which Rodgers is as well. So I'm cool giving him that. But then you look at it, he's also 40. And in the history of the NFL, the only quarterbacks to score over 190 points, I believe it was, or average 15 points per game, was Tom Brady. He did it a couple times, Drew Brees, and 1 year of Brett Favre. So Aaron Rodgers has to make history on two different fronts, and that's just not something I'm willing to bet on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, because I feel like everybody's in on the skill position guys on those two teams, right? We're all in on Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan and everybody in Atlanta. People are still in on, obviously, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. I guess maybe to some extent Mike Williams when he's healthy. But I don't feel the same level of enthusiasm for either Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers coming off a major injury last season. Running backs. Only 6 running backs since 2010 have had 15-plus fantasy points per game at age 29 or older. In the last 6 years, only 2 running backs started the season at 28 years of age or older and finished inside the top 10. Those 2 guys were Derrick Henry and Raheem Mostert. So let's start with Mostert, Florio. Obviously had a great year last year, a career season for him. He gets the extension from the Dolphins, so they're still very much in on him. I mean, he's 32 years old right now. Does he fall off the cliff this year? I know I've been saying I've been drafting because I like the ADP. Does he fall off the cliff? Because it can happen quickly for running backs.
That's what I don't think so, and there's nothing in the numbers that indicated, although funny enough, 4.8 yards per carry last year was his career worst. That blew my mind when I saw that. But yeah, these fall off of cliffs. They don't in the NFL. It doesn't happen gracefully. It happens overnight, seemingly, especially at the running back position. So it is possible. But Mostert is another one of these players that if he succeeds, he's going to be making history because running backs 32 years or older 21 of them in NFL history have scored 190 or more PPR points. That was the threshold to be a top 24 running back last year. The last one to do so was Frank Gore in 2016. And since 2010, the only other running backs to join Frank Gore are D'Angelo Williams and Fred Jackson. So very short list of players who have been able to have a big fantasy impact at this age. But that being said, you're getting all of the risk baked into Raheem Mostert's ADP. Like if Mostert was going in the 4th round rather than the 8th, I'd probably feel a lot different about drafting him. But in the 8th round, I'm like, he's going with other backup running backs. That's worth the shot.
I mean, are you still in on Mostert? I see you pumping the fists there.
Yeah, it's free. 8th round is crazy, man. I mean, look, you're still on a high power offense that's going to create a lot of scoring opportunities. Most of his fantasy points came from the touchdowns. He's an efficient runner. He barely had over 1,000 yards, what people are like really not really looking at as well. But he was effective in the passing game as well when given opportunity. So you're getting the PPR upside there with the catches, and you're getting all the red zone duty. It's just no brainer here in the 8th round. Like, oh, okay, thank you. You feel like you're stealing walking away with him.
I mean, I'm still very much in on him, but I think a couple things do worry me. I mean, one, all these stats, and again, this is not solidify that things are going to go bad, but it's just sort of kind of a guideline. The other part is last year was so amazing for him. I mean, 18 touchdowns. It's going to be hard to replicate that, especially when Devon Achane is there. I guess the upside is they're not going to, you're not going to see Mostert get a full-time workload. He had 209 carries last year, which was a career high. I would think the number is similar, if not a little bit lower. So maybe that helps some of the wear and tear. But, I think there are reasons to be concerned, but maybe it is, as you mentioned, the price or the risk is baked in to the ADP. Got a handful of guys, though, who are going to be turning 29 years old this year. So I'll start with you, LaQuan. Who is more likely to average at least 15 points per game? Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, James Conner. All 4 of those guys are going to be turning 29 this season.
This is a good one, man. I mean, I want to remove Eckler. I don't see it in his future over here with the Commanders, just based on you have Jaden Daniels, who's probably going to lead that team in red zone carries as well. So a lot of the scoring opportunities may be taken away from him, but I think Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara and James Conner could pull this off. And I think James Conner will probably have like 13 to 14 games played where he'll be up there again, where he's averaging 15 fantasy points per game. Aaron Jones, if the way he finished the season last year, those last 3 games, if he keeps that same energy and same momentum going with the Vikings now, and they're showing clips of him getting utilized in the pass game, et cetera, but we already know the pass catcher he is. So it's definitely in the stars with him. And Alvin Kamara, come on now. We know he's going to catch a bunch of balls. I mean, the dude averages like the most targets per game, and he missed 3 games. So it's like we already know his involvement in the pass game. So he's definitely up there on the table where his ceiling could be like the 15 fantasy points per game.
All right, Florio, you got a pick for this one?
Yeah, I think it's Alvin Kamara, pretty hands down in my opinion, because of what LQ said, because of all the passes that are going to go his way. 13 games he played last year, 86 targets, 75 catches. That equates to nearly 6 catches per game, which means in PPR, that's like a free touchdown every single week that he's getting. And people who might be like, oh, well, Derek Carr might not throw. Yeah, Derek Carr threw 20% of his passes last year to running backs, and that is his career norm. He is someone who is going to dump the ball off plenty. So I feel best about him. I considered Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones is playing with either Sam Darnold or a rookie quarterback, so I think that works against him a little bit. And to LQ's point, I think James Conner averages 15 points per game. It's just a question of how many games will we get that out of him for. It could be 8, it could be 12. I doubt it'll be 17, but it's just a matter of how many.
Yeah, I guess I had to go back and look because I didn't remember Alvin Kamara catching as many passes last year. And I think some of it's because the yardage totals were way down, right? I mean, last year he had 75 catches for 466 yards. His rookie year, he had 81 catches. He had 6 more catches for 826 yards, right? I mean, almost 400 yards more, about 350 more yards on just 6 more catches. So it just didn't feel like he was catching the football at the same rate as he had in the past. And so, yeah, that number is sort of wild. I would think that it's going to be similar just because I don't know that I'm buying much into the wide receiver. Look, they've got Chris Olave. I like Rashid Shaheed.
That's about it.
I was gonna say, where else?
Alvin Kamara.
Where else are they going with the football? So I guess that's sort of the thing. I still lean toward James Conner. I mean, we're talking about averaging, right? Like, yeah, he may not give you 16, 17 games, but when he's out there, he is still as productive as anybody. That being said, I'm also drafting Trey Benson because I think he's going to start getting opportunities this year. Aaron Jones, I worry about just because I don't know how good the Vikings offense is going to be. And I think that's going to sort of impact him. I think, if they start trailing, which is certainly possible, then you start seeing a lot more Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, so on and so forth, and maybe less of Aaron Jones. And I think I'm with you guys. Eckler, I'm just sort of out on Austin Eckler this year. If I'm drafting a Commanders running back, it more often than that has been Brian Robinson because I think having Jaden Daniels there as a runner, when things start to break down, is he going to dump it off to Austin Eckler or is he just going to take off and run?
He's going to take off.
He's going to take off and run.
He's going to take off.
That's going to make it hard for Eckler to get that same target share that he had all those years with the
Marcus,
Chargers.
to your point on Kamara, he had a game last year with 13 catches for 33 yards.
That's gross.
I love it. PPR mad.
2.5 yards per catch.
Those kinds of games are what radicalized me against full point PPR. Like it really did. Like
Julian Edelman stat line.
It is just gross and disgusting that like you got what is that? You got 16 points out of just on that alone. Like that is gross. It is unconscionable, right? It's the Russell Westbrook like sitting over in the corner eating a snack, hoping when nobody's looking. Right? That's what it is. Like that's taking advantage of that. Like you did something wrong, but you didn't take advantage of it.
Eating a hot dog at work.
It is. It's just like you can't skip lunch. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to wide receivers. One wide receiver stat in here: no wide receiver age 32 or above has averaged 15 plus points per game in a season since 2020. DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, both going to hit that mark this season. So, Florio, we'll start with you. Who is more likely to average 15 or more points per game? Callie obviously has thoughts on that as well. DeAndre Hopkins or Keenan Allen? Who's the guy that's more likely to hit that number this year?
I think it's Keenan Allen. Look, Keenan last year on a look, I know he put up wide receiver 1 numbers and people were saying like, oh, it's volume based, but like he averaged his best yards per route ran since 2018. He on a metric base was awesome. You can't make that same claim for DeAndre Hopkins. He posted his worst rating, catch rate, EPA since 2016, worst separation since 2017. A lot of tight window throws, and the deep ball was saving him because Will Levis threw the deep ball more than anyone down the stretch. So that kind of saved him. But this year, I'm like, is that going to go to Calvin Ridley? So volume concerns with both of them, but I feel much, much better about Keenan Allen than I do DeAndre Hopkins.
Where are you at on this one, LaQuan?
Yeah, I'm with Keenan Allen also. I mean, it just seems more of a situation where if I did have to choose, where we're looking at the situations and there's a lot of question marks in Tennessee, but there's question marks in Chicago, but not that many on a basis of who will be utilized as what and who can actually execute what with said quarterback. I mean, we don't know about Caleb, but we know he's a generational talent. That's what's labeled on him. I don't want to get too crazy with the expectations on him, but I really think he's going to change this Bears franchise. He's going to break that 4,000 yard record. He's going to go out there and have a CJ Stroud like type of season. And I really see this happening just based on the pieces that they have around him. So when I look at Will Levis, yeah, he has Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears at the running back, bring in Tyler Boyd to help out on third down. DeAndre Hopkins is still your one, but you bring in Calvin Ridley, and that's where Florio was hitting on. I don't know if he's going to be the field stretcher. I don't know if he's going to be the guy that looks like the new toy in the house, where DeAndre Hopkins kind of looks like the old aging veteran that probably needs to switch to the slot position, you know?
My answer right now is neither. And I went back and forth on this a long time trying to figure it out. And what I come down to is in Chicago, I have more confidence in their quarterback. I have more confidence in Caleb Williams than I do Will Levis, but there's a lot more target competition there, right? Or when you've got DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet's going to get some occasionally as well. There's a lot more mouths to feed in that offense. And while I do think at some point Caleb probably does get that 4,000-yard passing mark, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen this year. But let's say he still throws for 3,800 yards. That's a pretty good season.
Yeah.
Is it enough to support all those three wide receivers and then whoever else is going to get targets in the offense? On the other side, I think there's less target competition in Tennessee. There's Calvin Ridley there. Look, there was that quote floating around from DeAndre Hopkins about Treylon Burks and whether or not people are sleeping on him, and that was a whole thing. Go look it up. Nuke clarified later what he meant by the original comment. But the point being, there's less target competition there, but I don't know that I trust Will Levis to get the ball consistently to his guys. And then, as you mentioned, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are going to take some of those targets as well. I could see both these guys sort of averaging 13, 14 points per game. And
I'll take that.
It's fine. It's not a bad season at all. I just don't know that either of them get to 15. And I really thought long and hard about this, about, which one of these guys could do it. I guess Keenan Allen is the more likely one, but I think in reality, I don't know that either one of them does.
No. I'm with
That's
you.
probably the correct answer.
Me and Florio are just flat out wrong.
No, you're not flat out wrong. Look,
I think it's there. It's on the table for them. I'm with that. But if I had to choose, if you had me on a cliff and I had to choose between one, I'm going to pick Keenan Allen.
If I had you on a cliff and this was the question I asked you, then we should probably not be friends anymore.
I was going to say, what scenario is someone like
Who would you save?
You should rethink your life choices if that's the situation you find yourself in at any point. Everybody is hyped because OTAs are underway. We're getting slow motion videos of guys doing basic football things, and we're all going nuts over it because it's been a while since we have seen guys doing football things. But sometimes maybe the hype train rolls out of control. So I put together 4 little headlines that I have seen recently, and we can decide whether this is actual hype train and we should get fired up, or that it's a smoke screen and maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit. So start in Carolina, LaQuan, where Dave Canales said Bryce Young is, quote, doing fantastic in the team's new offense. This is coming off of an awful rookie season for Bryce Young. Now, it wasn't totally his fault. But Dave Canales saying his quarterback is doing fantastic. Hype train or smoke screen?
Hype train. I honestly do believe that he's doing better than what he was doing last year in camp, with somewhat of a great addition and upgrade to the O-line. And now you have a guy that can separate and actually get outside and win is Deontay Johnson. So, of course, it looks a lot better than what was on tape last year because, man, it was horrendous watching everybody trying to get separated. They could not do it. So when you bring in a guy like Deontay Johnson, who's been able to play with mid-tier to low-tier quarterbacks and able to elevate them at some times of the game, I really feel as though I've secretly just been getting Bryce Young later in drafts, just an experiment on some of these best ball leagues, just to see if Deontay Johnson can actually make him take a step forward and this offense in total.
Where are you at on this one, Florio?
Hype train. I did not plan on becoming a Bryce Young supporter, but here I am. I just think, like, how could it be any worse than last year? I love Dave Canales. I thought that was a really good hiring. Deontay Johnson was a great get. They added Leggett in the draft as well. They added to the backfield, to the O-line. Like, they just finally look more like an actual NFL offense, not what they were trying last year with the league's worst O-line, the league worst wide receiving core, and being like, all right, Bryce, go get him. Like, so I'm excited for Bryce. And while we're talking about the Panthers, Deontay Johnson is an absolute screaming value right now in early drafts.
Yeah, it's funny, and maybe it'll start to change in the next couple of weeks. Which, by the way, I think this is hype train too. I think Dave Canales is going to get this thing turned around. We've seen it with quarterbacks in the past, and like you guys have both said, it can't really be worse than what they had last year. But I'm wondering in the next couple of weeks, are we going to see the ADPs change? Because I feel like that conversation has become louder and more consistent recently, that like, hey, stop sleeping on Bryce Young. Hey, stop sleeping on Deontay Johnson. So I get the feeling that if you have been drafting them at a discount, do it now because that discount feels like it's going away because everybody is starting to say the same thing about these guys and this Panthers offense. Look, I think within reason, right? Like, I don't think anybody's sitting here saying that like suddenly they're going to look like Houston from last year, but they should be a damn sight better than they were in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
For real. Florio, Michael Mayer talking about the Raiders offense. He's excited about it. And he said about Brock Bowers that, quote, we can both do it all. He thinks the Raiders are going to be dangerous offensively. Hype train or smokescreen?
Hype train, but like, because I do think like Michael Mayer is a player that I was hoping to be very excited about this summer until they drafted Brock Bowers. But when I read this question, what I thought of when I was a kid, I had like this poster on my room and it was like NBA guard big men, like the best in the league, like Kobe and Shaq, Chris Webber and Mike Bibby. And then it was Allen Iverson and Dikembe Mutombo. And it's like, whoa, Allen Iverson's carrying all of the water on that one. That's what this reminds me of. Like, yeah, you two can do it all, but Brock Bowers is going to be doing the heavy, heavy lifting here.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, LaQuan?
I'm gonna go with Smokescreen. I honestly think, he's supposed to say that. I mean, this guy doesn't want to lose reps to, the rookie and stuff. I think they will find a way to make it match and make it work. I just think for fantasy, it's going to be a nightmare trying to figure out what's going on week to week. And I don't think I'm on board for that with a tight end. Like if it was a wide receiver or running back, I'll be a little bit, more interested into it, but trying to figure out who's going to be doing what and what impact one player is going to have on the other is no, not for me.
So I think it's a hype train in the mind of Michael Mayer. Like I think he's correct when he says we can both do it all, because I think they can, right? Brock Bowers was a beast at Georgia. Michael Mayer was a beast at Notre Dame. So I think in that respect, he's right. In terms of like what's going to actually happen, it's a smokescreen.
Yeah.
There's just, look, you got these two tight ends and, even if the Raiders want to play more 12 personnel, more two tight end sets, do they play enough of them to make both these guys viable? I think a lot of people have pointed out that the last team to really do this successfully was the Patriots when they had Gronk and Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
They also still have Devontae Adams. They have Jacoby Myers. And I don't know that any of us trust Gardner Minshew to be able to get the ball to these guys consistently. So I think Michael Mayer is I almost called him Michael Myers like this was Halloween. But I think Michael Mayer in his mind I think he's right that they both can do. They're both really talented guys, but I think for fantasy, I'm not buying into this, until I actually see it. In LA, Chargers general manager Joe Horitz said Quentin Johnston is, quote, really going to launch in second season because, LaQuan, we all know he was stuck on the runway in his rookie season. So when you hear this from the Chargers general manager, is it hype train or smokescreen?
Smokescreen. You got to show me something. Don't you got to put something out there for me to believe, man. Like, don't talk about it. Just show me, like I think this is a huge smokescreen and I don't think people are really going to buy into it just based on the bad taste that he left.
You with that, Florio?
I am choosing to believe. I'm saying hype train because if you remember last year, I spoke about this a lot. I think Quentin Johnston was completely misused. Like, and he was misused not just by the Chargers, but like by everyone a lot of people coming into the NFL because you see this 6'4" physical specimen and you're like, that guy can go downfield and win 50-50 balls and everything. But then when you watched his college tape, it was like, no, that's what he needs to work his game on the most. Like he is a yak beast. And then Mike Williams got hurt and they just kind of tried to use him as Mike Williams. And he was able to get open downfield. He had a number of deep touchdowns go off his hands. So he's shown the capability to get open. I think that hopefully he catches those this year. Yeah. But I'm also trusting the new coaching staff to kind of be like, we need to use this guy a little bit more to his strengths. And they're building up the run game there and the run blocking and all of that. And I think Quentin Johnston could be a big piece there. Now for fantasy, I don't know if he's going to be the most fantasy relevant guy because the Chargers are going to be a very run heavy team, but I think he bounces back for real life purposes at the very least.
I'm going Smokescreen on this one, and maybe Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh figure out a way to use him closer to what his skill set is. There's also the issue though of they've got Lad McConkey there too, and how much are they going to overlap in this offense?
Yeah.
I know our friend and wide receiver whisperer Matt Harmon likes to always say that drops don't matter. They matter in the sense of when the quarterback and the offense loses faith in you. And I think that's some of what we saw last year, that at some point Justin Herbert just didn't trust him. There were times they had to go to him because there just weren't other guys available at some point during the season. But I think when given the choice, Herbert was going elsewhere. And so I feel like when you hear Joe Horitz say this, and I think you see this a lot of times with coaches and general managers, that when they make a comment about a guy in the media, that sometimes it is really for an audience of one. It is for that player. And I think this is a situation where Horitz is saying, hey, look, we're going to give you every opportunity to go out there and be a playmaker. This is your chance to do it, because really it's a whole new regime. It's a new coach. It's a new GM. There is no investment from this group on Quentin Johnston, and they don't have any real obligation to force him into the offense. Like, yeah, they got to deal with this contract the rest of the time, but they don't really have to live with this guy. So if he doesn't perform, they can move on along. So, are either of you drafting Quentin Johnston? I guess is my question.
No.
I was like crickets.
I'm trying to figure out where his ADP is. It's wide receiver
low.
66.
It's pretty low.
I'll take a shot on him there.
All right, I guess so. That's fair.
In my home league where I can be a little bit loose and play around, I'll do that then.
The wide receivers going right after him are Ricky Pearsall and Darnell Mooney. I'm like, I'll take a gamble.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. Which, side note, by the way, you talking about drafting him in your home league. I don't know if either of you have this issue, but because, we do a lot of drafts. We do a lot of mock drafts. We draft with other people in this industry who spend a lot of time studying this. Do either of you find yourselves outsmarting yourself in your home leagues where you're digging for these sleepers who work well in deep leagues that maybe you probably should just left alone in your home league? Did it ever happen?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you just galaxy brain, you're oh yeah, no, I love this dude. It might take an injury for him to get on the field, but he's really gonna pop. And then you realize that I'm in a 10-team league with 3 guys on the bench. I think I went a little too deep here.
I did the exact opposite last year. I underestimated. My home league is we still have a pretty deep roster and everything. And I was I don't need to take Puka here. I'll get him in the next round. No one knows about Puka in this league. And the guy who's the taco of our league took Puka. And I was shocked.
Oh my God.
Man. That sucks.
I never get Rams players in my home league with my friends. I never get any of them. Even down to the kicker when Greg Zuerlein was on the Rams, he will be gone 10th round. What are you doing here? Why?
New York players all go for a premium in my home league.
Yeah, I would think. If I was in your league, LaQuan, I would probably take Rams players and then try to trade them to you for a premium.
Yeah, immediately after the draft is over, I lie to you not. It's always one person I got Matthew Stafford.
I got Matthew Stafford. What do you want?
Nothing.
I got that Stafford pack. What you want for it? Stuff like that. It's for real. Last one here. Bears running backs coach Chad Morton, fight on, said he's excited about using DeAndre Swift as a pass catcher out of the backfield. LaQuan Hype Train or Smokescreen on this?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, we've seen DeAndre Swift get utilized in the pass game, pretty much throughout every venture with the Lions and the Eagles. It's just not as often as we would like, but there's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense, going into the season. So I would take that with a grain of sand. Yeah, there you go. I can't even speak right now, but I really feel as though yes, he'll be utilized in the pass game. He's excited to get him involved, but I just don't think it'll be such a huge impact for us to see DeAndre Swift as this RB1 as a consistent basis to be a guy that's going to be putting up major points. He's going to be utilized. He's going to be mixed into the offense. It's just a lot going on there to where he's not going to be the premier player there.
I mean, look, Florio, we saw 1 or 2 years in Detroit when Swift caught a lot of passes. Last year in Philly, it was kind of, I mean, does this have some merit, what Chad Morton is saying?
I think so. I do think DeAndre Swift can be utilized there. I think his biggest competition is Roshan Johnson, probably. But the fact that the Bears invested in him right away and gave him the money that they did on the minute free agency dropped leads me to believe that at least early on, he'll get the opportunities where what he does with them will dictate if he continues to get them all year. And if he struggles, they have other options there. But like heading into week one, I think Swift is going to get the large majority of opportunities in that backfield.
Yeah, I'll say I'm buying into it. I mean, when the running back coach is saying he's excited about it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But I do think that it's a skill set that they do want to utilize. I don't know if there's, like last year they kept saying they're going to try to throw the ball more to Khalil Herbert, and that never really happened. So I think Swift.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think Swift actually does take that over. So how much it happens remains to be seen, but I actually do think they're going to start using him in that capacity coming up this year. But as we have all said, a lot of guys there that can catch the football in Chicago, and how they can work that around. We'll find out for sure. So, good place for us to take a pause for this week. Of course, we'll have the cheat sheet for you on Thursday. Special guest, Steve Weish, right? Scheduled to join us. You can see across the network in a variety of capacities, but Steve, a great guy. Looking forward to having him on. Also, we will debut the film festival. I guess it's not the Florio Film Festival for this first one, because you've seen Draft Day, right?
I watched it last month.
Yeah, so
I'm watching it tonight. I'm excited. I got the popcorn ready. I'm locked in.
So LaQuan will be watching the film festival. We'll also put out the poll of like what genre we should do, so you guys can vote on that and let us know if we stay with 90s action movies or if we do something else. We'll figure that part out.
Patrick Claybon said we should do rom-coms.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I am not. I know some. I'm not super well versed in them, so maybe this is good.
Same.
We can all sort of get something where we're all kind of out of our depth a little bit. I might just shut down the voting and just do rom-coms at this point. That feels like a good idea. Anyway, no, we'll put it out there. We'll let you guys vote on it, what we should do for this summer. But in the meantime, that'll do it for this edition of the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks to Susie Bainon for putting this together for us. Stay happy, safe, and healthy. Do good and live well. Watch some movies. Talk to you on Thursday. Everybody, we'll see you then.